We just finished chapter 18, verse 29, going through the life of Pontius Pilate, at least how it relates to the time of Jesus in Israel, that was written by Flavius Josephus. Now, during this time also, it doesn't mention it here, but Judas Iscariot commits suicide, and then Peter leaves and goes out and weeps, and then probably 2 or 3 days during the crucifixion, I can't imagine how down he was. Horrible the whole situation was. Hopeless as far as man can see. What else can be done? He died, and that's the end of it. This is what Peter probably thought. And he's going to hold this guilt for the rest of his life that he denied him 3 times. It begins then in verse 30 for where we left off. Apokrithi son, and they answered, Ke ipon avto, and they said to him after Pilate said, what charge do you bring against this man? And they said, Imi in utos kakopios uk ansi paradokamen avton. If this one was not doing evil, we would not have delivered him up. Well, what a smart aleck answer to give to a ruler. And this is their attitude. But it says in verse 31, Ipen un avtis o Pilatos, lavate avton imis. You take him. Ke kataton nomon imon, kriate avton, and according to your law, judge him. Ipon un avto iudei. Then the Jews said to him, Imin uk exastin apokatine udena. To us it's not allowed to kill anyone. So apparently the Romans would not allow somebody to put somebody else to death under Roman law unless they were judged. It's too bad the Romans aren't ruling Israel today, because today the Jews don't think twice about killing all sorts of people in Gaza. And I'm not trying to get into politics about whether the other people deserve to be killed or they don't deserve to be killed, if it's a war or if it's not a war. All of these things are happening. But if the Romans were there, they wouldn't be doing it. But they are, and we'll go to that issue a little bit later after the resurrection. And so we're not allowed to kill anyone. So it shows by them saying that they want to kill Jesus, a man who healed all sorts of people, raised the dead, had forgiveness of sins, but yet they wanted to kill him. And I think about to the Jews today, which side they are. If they want to believe in Jesus and all the things he did, or would they kill him again? And in verse 32, it continues, Ina o logos tu isu pleorothi, that the word of Jesus should be fulfilled, on ipe, which he spoke, simenon pio thanato emelen apotheniskein, signifying by what death he was about to die. It says in Matthew 26:2, you have known that after 2 days the Passover takes place, and the Son of Man is delivered up for crucifying. So here is where Jesus had predicted that to his disciples. Now, what's also missing in this section here is where in Matthew 27:13 it talks about Jews accusing Jesus and Pilate saying, well, do you not hear how much they witness against you? And trying to get Jesus to answer, which he wouldn't. And that whole story is in Matthew 27:13. And also in verse 19, Pilate's wife comes to him and tells him she had a horrible dream about that man, for him not to do anything about it. And then Luke has it in chapter 23:6 that Jesus was mentioned as being from Galilee, and Pilate decided, well, if he's from Galilee, then he's under another jurisdiction, which would have been Herod. So he decides to send Jesus to Herod, because I believe Herod was in the city at that time. And then that whole section is recorded in Luke 23. And then it says at the end of that Herod and Pilate became friends through that exchange. Then in verse 33 continues, Isiothen un is to praetorion Pilate o Pilatos. Then Pilate entered then into the praetorium again. Ke aphonis ton esun, ke aphonis ton esun, and he called Jesus. Ke ipen avto, and said to him, after talking to the Jews, Ci o vasilefs ton Iudeon? Are you the king of the Jews? Apokrithi avto o Isus, Jesus answered to him, Af iavtu, si tuto legis? Is this from yourself? Do you say this? I ali si ipon peri emu, or others spoke to you concerning me. Well, he knew exactly what the Jews were up to, and accusing him of being a king instead of their king being Caesar, which they say. Verse 35, Apokrithi o Pilatos, and Pilate answered, Amiti, much less ego Iudeos me? Am I a Jew? Like, what are you talking about? Jesus? He's talking to Jesus, God. And he says, I'm not a Jew. Of course I don't know anything about this. It's more or less what he's saying. Ethnos toson ke iarchiaris paradokai se imi. Your nation and the chief priests delivered you to me. So here we see this chief priest wanting to kill Jesus, even the chief priests. And the nation delivered him up. And here Jesus answered, Apokrithi o Isus, Ivasilia I emi, uk estin ek tu kos mututu. My kingdom is not from out of this world. I ek tu kos mututu in Ivasilia I emi, if my kingdom was from out of this world, I iparete an I emi ego ni zonto, in emi paradotho tis Iudeis. My officers would have been struggling that I should not be delivered up to the Jews. Nin the Ivasalia I emi uk estin entevthen. But now my kingdom is not from here. So Jesus is a king. Ipen un avto o Pilatos, ukun vasilefs I, see? Then you are a king. Apokrithi o Isus, Jesus answered, Si legis, you say it. Oti vasilefs imi ego, for I am a king. He is King Jesus. We are subjects to the king. We are subjects of Jesus. We're in the world, whatever country we are in. We obey the rules that this country has, but we never want to forget where we really are from and where we are going, and that is to be with the king in his kingdom. His kingdom come, he came to tell him, it's coming, it's here. You can, and to be under the king Jesus, then you are no longer a citizen, but a subject. That's what they call people that are under kings. They're subjects to the king. If the king says to do something, then you do it. You don't vote on it. And then it continues, Ke is tuto elilitha is ton cosmon. And for this I have come into the world. In a martyriso ti alethea, that I should testify to the truth. Pas o on ek tis aletheas, acui mu tis phonis. Everyone being from the truth hears my voice. And so we are of the truth. And he is sending, he says, the spirit of the truth, the pneuma aletheia. This is what the Agios Pneuma, the Holy Spirit, is also called later in Acts. But Jesus says it's the spirit of the truth. And then Jesus expounds on that and says that he is the truth. I'm the truth, the way, the truth, and the life. So the truth is Jesus. That is the truth. And nothing else but Jesus being the truth. And so the people that understand that, to hear it, take it in, maybe you, me, then we understand what Jesus is saying here. But what does Pilate say? Legi avto o Pilatos. And Pilate says to him, Ti estin aletheia. What's truth? I mean, if you're used to people lying to you all the time, then, what is truth? But we know because we hear the voice of our King. Ke tuto ipon palein exilthe pros to Iudeus. And this having said, again he came forth to the Jews, that is, ke legi av tis, and says to them, Ego udemian aitian evrisco en avto. I find not one fault in him. Esti they sinio thie imin ina imin apoliso. But it's a custom with you that I should loosen one to you at the Passover, ento Pasco. Pilate is sort of trying to find a way out for Jesus that he can let him go. He says he hasn't found any fault and no reason to put him to death. So he offers to release one person for Jesus, assuming that they would not want to get rid of Jesus, who is a righteous man, and Barabbas, who is a robber. They would want to get rid of Barabbas. But not these Jews. Nope. They want, he says, vous laissez un imin apoliso ton vasilea ton Iudeon. Do you want then I should loose to you the king of the Jews? Ek kravgasan un palein. And they cried out then again, Pontus legontus, all saying, Me tuton, ala ton Baravan. Not this one, but Barabbas. We want the robber instead of the righteous one. In the overavas listis. And Barabbas was a robber. So here we have these Jews who have been against Jesus all along, seeing him do all these righteous things, being envious of him because people were following them instead of these people. And many people listened to these Jews that hated Jesus, hated him so much. Then they took him and slapped him in front of the high priest, and then they delivered him up to the Romans. And these are the Jews doing this, even though he was found innocent by Pilate, and they rejected the kingship of Jesus, and they wanted a robber rather than Jesus. But it gets worse than that when we go into the next section here where it's the crown of thorns.